would have lost the right to push buttons in the future. This is May 26th, 7th period, as we get into my first talk at the end of the year. Before I forget, since I told you I would show them to you real quick, I have pictures. Those are other stories we'll get a chance to get to with our script here. One of those kids is a bully. One of those kids is my friend that did drugs. One of those kids is like my first friend that died when I was in high school. But those are stories that I get to on Friday. Here would be the pictures from, adjust this from when I was in, that's me in 7th grade, and that's me in 8th grade. And then those are kids from other stories that I was friends with. And then I put her up there because that was the girl I had a crush on. And it gives me a chance to laugh at me because...
The one who, yawned.
Thanks for jumping on that one. Didn't waste any time laughing at me, Jack. So I figured I'd throw those up there just to entertain you. All right. Now back to other stuff. I will entertain you more shortly, but now back to this part. All right. The reason I record the classes is, one, because my stories change from class period to class period. This sort of alters depending on who's in the class and where my brain goes. Thursday will be the big day, because when you've heard kids talk about my stories, it's Thursday's story is the one that they usually talk about. Today and tomorrow are more entertaining because you get to laugh at me and my poor choices in life. And then Thursday is the one that they probably told you about. And then Fridays are not going to affect you guys anyway. I didn't always do stories at the end of the year. It's something I didn't start doing until several years into teaching. I used to do what every teacher does at the end of the year, which is show movies. And there's a reason why teachers show movies. There's a two-part reason, in case you didn't think about it. One, you guys are insane at the end of the year, and in order to prevent a teacher from snapping and stabbing you, they try to keep you subdued by showing you flickering images, and that seems to keep you guys from writing, so they'll show that. But really, the bigger reason is we have tons of work that we have to do at the end of the year, paperwork that just makes teaching not fun. And so we have all this paperwork that we have to get done, and by showing you guys movies, it allows teachers to get that paperwork done. So that's why a lot of teachers show movies. And that's what I did for the first several years that I was a teacher, until one day, one year I was teaching, something weird happened after school, and it sort of changed things forever after. And it didn't seem like a weird thing now, but for me at the time, it was weird. And I was sitting in my room at my desk after school when I had an 8th grader stop by my room, and they just knocked on the door, and I was like, "What's up?" And they said, "Can I come in?" I'm like, "Sure." And they just sat down in a little chair from my desk, and they just started talking, which is weird, because I didn't teach this kid, and they were an 8th grader, and the idea of them coming back to talk to me struck me as really weird, because growing up, I didn't have teachers that I would go back and talk to, whether it be in that same year and then after school. You can just put it all on my desk, if you're done. Let alone coming back as an 8th grader to come talk to. And the whole time that they were in here talking to me, I remember thinking, this is weird. I don't teach you. Why are you in here? But I was nice, and it was pleasant. It was a good conversation. And I actually enjoyed talking to them, although I thought it was strange. And the next day, I remember talking to my 7th graders, like, the weirdest thing happened yesterday. Like, what? I'm like, some 8th grader came in and talked to me after school, just like about their life. And they go, "Why?" And I go, "I have no idea." But then it happened a couple more times. I'd have just 8th graders come in. And then it happened over like the next year or so. I'd have 8th graders who would just come in and hang out in my room after school to come talk to me, which astounds me, because that's not what I had growing up. I didn't have a teacher that I would feel comfortable to go back and talk to on any level. I didn't even have a teacher that I would go and talk to during passing periods. I barely had teachers I wanted to go back and smile at, let alone like talk to in any way. I had one teacher, I remember in 6th grade, that I enjoyed, and I really liked her class. That's just because she was young and really stupid. Nothing against her. She had no idea what she was doing, and I just enjoyed her energy, but she wasn't a great teacher. But I enjoyed being in her room. But that was it about junior high. I had teachers I hated less than others, but no teacher I actually liked. And then a couple years went by, and then the next level of weirdness went, and I had a knock after school. And when I opened the door, it wasn't an 8th grader. It was a high school kid. And they're like, "Hey, I saw your car in the parking lot." I drove a big purple Pontiac. Everyone can see it. You can see it from space. And so they're like, "Hey, I saw your car in the parking lot. Can I come in and talk?" And I was like, "Why?" And they're like, "I don't know, just see what's going on." I'm like, "Sure." And so they came in and sat down, and we chatted and talked. And once again, that struck me as weird, the whole idea of coming back and talking to a teacher by choice. And I learned a lot from my kids when they came back to talk to me about why, of all teachers to come back and talk to, why choose me, people to come back. And it helped me examine what I do and help me figure out why I do what I do when I teach. And a lot of what I learned from that is what I get to on Thursday. But one of the big things I found out is kids would come back to talk to me when they went through something traumatic in their life. Oftentimes, it was not just to come back and chat, but they'd come back when something bad had happened and they needed someone to talk to. They would choose me to come back and talk to. Whether it's because I've had kids come back and talk to me after they got arrested, or whether their parents caught them with drugs, or whether they have screwed up something relationship-wise, or they've done something that their friends won't talk to them, or there's something they're scared to go talk to their parents about, they would come and talk to me. And I wouldn't judge them, and I'd listen to them, and I would oftentimes tell them stories about my own childhood as just a way of trying to help them. When they would tell me about the mistakes they made, I'm like, everyone makes mistakes. It's part of life. Life isn't about not making mistakes. Life is about screwing up and learning from it. That's the big stuff. And I was like, I've made horrible mistakes. Like, Mr. Brovicast, you've not made mistakes like I've made. I'm like, listen, child, I've made bigger mistakes than you could possibly imagine. And that's when I would tell them about the mistakes I've made. And the fact that I don't come from a perfect world. My childhood wasn't all rainbows and daisies. My childhood consisted of alcoholism and drug use. I'm the only member of my family who's not spent time in jail. I've been arrested. Everyone in my family's been arrested, but I've not been to jail. I'm the only one that can say that in my family. I'm one of the only people in my family who's not have a record for drugs and alcohol. Almost every member of my family has. I remember growing up and my grandparents, we couldn't go out to eat with them after 4 o'clock because they were such horrible alcoholics that if we were in public with them, they would get thrown out of restaurants. My uncle got arrested for cocaine use when I was in 5th and 6th grade, spent time in jail. And that's the stuff that I grew up with that I just thought was a normal life. And it was telling the kids this that opened their eyes. And I would tell them of the fact that I've been arrested in my life, the fact that I've been arrested 3 times. And each time I've been arrested, it was one of those events that makes me think the world's going to end. Because you're going to have those life-changing moments where you think, it can't go on. This is it. I've screwed up and there is no recovering. I've had that moment 3 times at least. And the world is about how you recover from that. Not about not making those mistakes, because you have to make those mistakes. It's part of being human. Every single one of you at some point between now and the time you graduate from high school is going to have a moment where you think you've screwed up your life and you can't recover from it. It's just part of life. It's part of how things go forward. You will be defined by how you recover from that event. How is it you define who you are as a human and move forward from that? So I shared with the kids how I moved forward from those events. And my kids coming back to talk to me, the 8th graders, as long as your teacher isn't mine. As long as your teacher isn't mine, that's fine. How you recover from those events is the important stuff. And so my 7th graders and my 8th graders, my high schoolers who came back to talk to me, they told me that I should tell these stories to my 7th graders. And I was like, I didn't think you guys were ready for them yet. And they said, well, give it a try. So one year at the end of the year, I told a little bit of one of my stories, and it went over really well. And then I expanded on it every year from there. And I realized that I can make a difference with my stories. And so I tell the stories for 2 reasons. There's 2 big pushes behind why I do what I do. One is I want you guys to realize that I'm not perfect, that teachers aren't perfect. Teachers try to put it out there that we can't do anything wrong and that you need to live up to these high ideals of where everything is going to be perfect, and that's not the way life works. We're human. We screw up. Some of us screw up a lot. And I figure by showing you what made me who I am, I will show you my screw-ups in life. And hopefully you learn from my screw-ups in life. That's what I want from you. I want you to learn from my mistakes. And the other thing is, I've learned that a lot of adults, and your parents especially, still treat you like little kids. And you're not little kids anymore. And you guys are in a tough spot right now because you're a year out of being in the intermediate school, which means you were just a little bit out from being in elementary school. And a lot of your parents still see you that way. And that's not the way you are. Not how life is going forward. You're not little kids anymore. And For a lot of you, to quote from The Outsiders, this is your last year to be golden. Things are going to change moving forward from here. 7th grade, for many of you, not all of you, and it's so unfortunate I can't say all of you, but for many of you, you are unfamiliar with drugs and alcohol. You know it exists, you know it's in TVs, you know it's in movies, you know it's out there. But by unfamiliar, I mean you've not had to deal with it on a first-hand basis. You don't have to worry about your friends doing it. Some of you do, and that's a conversation we have on Thursday. But for many of you, you don't yet, and that's a good thing. But it's going to end really soon. For many of you, it is this summer. It is the summer between 7th and 8th grade that things begin to change. By the time you leave 8th grade, you will know someone who smokes pot, or who drinks, or does one of those illegal drugs. You will know somebody, and not just that scary kid. Because all of you say, oh, Miss Roback, I know someone. There's this scary kid in my PE class. No one likes him. I'm sure he does it. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, you're going to be familiar with someone who has done it. By the time you get halfway through your freshman year, so the time you're halfway through 9th grade, it'll be someone you're very close to. It'll be someone that you hung out with in junior high. By the time you get to that point, will have done it. By the time you graduate and you're a senior in high school, it'll be one of your friends. Someone that you hung out with in junior high will have done it, and you will have lost a friendship because of it. The thing that happened, and that was then, this is now, will happen to you, because it happens to almost every single one of my students. And so I realized the other thing I wanted to do was talk to you like you're an adult, because this is my last time to have an impact on you. Everything I've done this year was to make you a better person. When my kids come back and talk to me about the poor choices they've made, they tell me about the fact that they drop out of high school when they turn 16. They tell me about the fact that they're pregnant when they're in high school. This year I'm going to an open house for one of my past seniors who is in my advanced 3rd period class. I get to meet her son this year at her open house because she had a baby her senior year. I've had students who get arrested for drugs. And so this is my last time to have some kind of an impact on you and to try to guide you to become the person I want you to be. Because I don't want you to have that hardship in your life. I don't want you to go down that path of sadness. So I want you to learn from my poor choices. So my goal this week is to tell you about the horrible things I've done so that you can learn from them. And then on Thursday, I try to build on that to make one last impression on you, to give you an idea of why I do everything I do. That's my somber beginning. That's my opening to you on why I do what I do. But now we're going to cheer up a little bit because now we get to laugh at me. And if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? So my stories of my arrests, I say we laugh at me because looking back on them now, they're funny. At the time, they weren't. At the time, it was all me just crying and scared, and it was a horrible moment. But it was a long time ago. So let's start with the first time the first time I got arrested. 2 things. 1, I hope that's a phrase that you never have to use. 1, it implies you've been arrested, which is not good. And 2, if you say the first time I've been arrested, that implies there's a second time you've been arrested. So I'm hoping that is not something that has to happen to you also. But for me, I have my first, my second, and my third. But my first time, I wasn't officially arrested. I was taken into police custody, but it's because I was 7 years old. And when you're 7 years old, you're a little young to be arrested because the handcuffs don't fit on your arms. They just slide off. It's adorable. I wasn't a bad kid when I was 7 years old. I was hanging out with a kid that was a bad influence. I was in 1st grade and he was in 4th grade. And he wasn't necessarily a bad kid as much as made just poor choices, as some kids do. And we lived on the same street, just opposite ends, and we'd ride our bikes back and forth to each other. And one day, riding our bikes back and forth, we passed a house that was empty. And we saw this empty house between the two of us, and he came up with this idea of it would make a really cool clubhouse. We should go and get into the house. We could run around and play inside of it. It struck me as a good idea. What kid doesn't want to run around that? But people who lived there, I don't know if it was being worked on, if it had sold, or what was going on, but the house was empty. They locked the front doors because they weren't idiots. So we couldn't get in. So we tried the windows. Windows we couldn't get in. We jumped the big fence in the back, tried the back sliding glass door, couldn't get in that way either. It's like, all right, guess we can't get in. So we were in the process of walking away when we saw a window we hadn't tried yet. This window was set down in the ground. And so not like into the ground, but like the bottom of the house. It's what's called an egress window. An egress window is when you have a basement or a crawl space, and so people can get underneath the house if you have a crawl space, or if it's a basement so you don't die if there's a fire, you can get out that way. And so it was a little window that was about as wide as your desk, but not quite as tall. It was like that tall, and it had like this little slidey thing, and it had this silver metal like half circle thing. And so we saw that, we slid it open, but it created an opening that was like a little bigger than my
Clipboard?
thank you, it's a big word. Clipboard. It's a little bigger than my clipboard. And so that's about how big the opening was. Fourth grader couldn't get into it. He's like, there's no way I can fit into that. We looked at my little brother and like, hey, why don't you go in there? And my little brother was like, that's not happening. I think he did it by crying. No, I didn't go in. And so we tried to bully him because that's what you do with younger brothers. And it was like we tried to force him into like his beat. I was like, I'm not going in. So that was not going to happen. So then they both turned to me. They're like, why don't you try it? Well, I was older than my brother, but I was stick thin when I was a kid. I was half twig and half stick. I looked like just a walking tree branch. And they're like, well, you could probably go in there. And I'm like, I don't want to go in there. It's dark and there's spiders. And I'm pretty sure there's like ants and a Bigfoot. And so I didn't want to have to go in. But they peer pressured me. And like any strong person, I immediately buckled to peer pressure. And then I was like, all right, I'll go in. And so they pull a thing, and I twiggied over it, twiggy, and I twiggied into the little window, and it was really dark, and I could feel cobwebs, and I wanted to cry. And so I was in there, and they're like, what do you see? And I'm like, darkness and tears. And they're like, well, look around. I looked around, all I saw was more darkness, because it was underneath the house. It was a crawl space. And the crawl space is if your house is not flat on the ground, which is called a slab. It has like a little bit of an area between the house and the ground, so that like fixed pipes and stuff like that. They can crawl down there. And so it was dirt on the bottom, and then just the roof of the floor of the house was above me. And I had about like just that much area to sort of like crawl around. And I remember I could see light around the edge of the house, like the house met the ground. And then that was it. I'm like, I don't see anything. I want to come back out. And he was like, all right. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, beam of light, boo, just came down in the middle of the darkness. And it was just like being beckoned, like, come to the light. I'm like, I see light. I'm like, go to the light. I'm like, I'm going to the light. And we're just crawling. I'm like, I'm a man. I'm a 7-year-old man. And we were just like crawling towards this light. And I got up to where the light was. And it was coming down. I stood up, and it was this little hole that was in the ceiling. But when I stood up into it, I came up in like this little room in the house. And there was the water heater on one side and this big furnace on the left-hand side. And it was the utility room, like where you keep all of the water heater, the furnace, stuff like that. And apparently the house was not designed well because there was a big opening that went into the crawl space, like raccoons and small children could get into your house. And no one wants an infestation of small children. And I remember like I could crawl my way up into this little area. I could push my way up into this crawl space, and then I could go between the water heater and the furnace, and I could like walk between them. And I remember the furnace was hot. It kept like burning my belly, and I kept going between them. And then the door was not a normal like door. It was like all flat. It was a Venetian door, which means it has slats that face down so light can come into it, and then it didn't have a door handle. You had to push in the middle of it, and like it was on hinges, and it would go snap and shove over to one side. And I remember like that was how the light was coming in. Like you could just put it all on my desk. And so the light was coming through there, and it shined into it, and that's how I saw, and it led me to it. I remember it closed. I remember stepping into the house, and I was in the house. I was all excited. I could look to my left, and there was the front door, and I could look to the right, and there was the glass sliding door that was the back of the house. And my brother and the fourth grader like pressed up against the little door, and like, come get us. And I ran over there, and I opened up that door, and they came running inside. We high-fived each other, woohoo! And we got all excited. And then we started running around the house. And, I mean, we didn't spray paint the place. We just ran around and played tag and jumped off the stairs and stuff like that. And did what any 7-year-old and 5-year-old and 9-year-old would do in running around a place like that. We just acted like hooligans and ran around and had a great time. And it was a blast. And at the end of the day, we closed it all back up, and we got out through, we went back out the back door and locked that behind us and then left. And then came back the next day. The next day, we brought a flashlight with us, and we brought lunches in little bags because we planned ahead. And then we played in the house the entire day. And then we came back the third day. And the third day, we brought toys. And then we brought like little dinosaurs and G.I. Joes and stuff like that. We played with the toys all around the place, and it was awesome. We did this for like 3 or 4 days. Until one day, it was like 3 or 4 days into it, I remember where we were set up. If you walk in the front door of the house, there were stairs immediately to your right that went up, and the utility closet was right below that. You could immediately turn right. Instead of going up the stairs, you go into like this front room, and then there was a dining room, and you went to this little hallway, and then there was the kitchen, and then you came back down to the front door. So you could like, I remember we could chase each other in a circle. We just like run in circles the whole time. It was awesome. we were in this kitchen area, and we had the glass door next to us. We saw the front door over here, and we were just sitting there like talking or playing or something like that. And while we were sitting in the kitchen, we heard at the front door that telltale sound, and like all of it, like, and I froze, like turned and looked at it, and we could see a shadow outside the front door, and we could hear it moving. We just had all crap. Like at the same time, we had no idea what to do. I mean, first option, of course, is just to poop yourself, but apparently that wasn't a good option, so we chose like option number 2, which should have been run out the back door, because there's a big door right there. But being small children, our thought was run and hide. So we ran deeper into the house to go hide. So we ran forward, which put us going this direction into like a little dining room. So there was a wall between us and whatever scary thing was coming in. And I remember all 3 of us going up against this wall, where there's the kitchen, like there's the wall right here, and there's the kitchen right behind us, the front door's over here, and the wall's like, I don't know, maybe a little bit longer than this, so we're all like pressed up against this wall, and my younger brother's right here, and then the 4th grader's right here, and we can hear the guy come walking in, boom, boom, doing it, he set out something heavy, boom, and he goes into the kitchen, like starts yelling, and all 3 of us like, I don't know what to do, we're all gonna die. I remember looking at my younger brother, and like looking at him, and he gives us a look like, I don't want to die. And I'm looking at the 4th grade, looks at me, he's like, you're going to die first. I'm like, oh, die. And then, not knowing what to do, I can hear him talking. I don't remember what he said. It just, in my mind, all I hear is like, fee, fi, fo, fum, not many children, or something like that. And so all 3 of us at the same time had the same idea, which was scream. Ah! We just screamed as loud as we could and ran. And we just took off running for the front door. Being an adult today, if I were to look back at this and the idea of being in an empty house and then all of a sudden you hear screaming from 3 little goblins like 3 feet from you, I probably would have just laid down and died and then maybe peed myself later. But that's not what he did. But all 3 of us run for the front door. Get to the front door. And I'm the first one there. And I know in movies, when you see the people running from the monsters and they can't open the front doors, you're like, what idiot can't open a front door? I'll tell you right now, when you think there's something behind you getting ready to eat you, a door is the most challenging thing in the world. I know how doors work. At 7 years old, I've been opening doors for over half my life, and I could not get that door for the life. I'm twisting it, and my brother's pounding on it, and the 4th grader's like yelling in my ear, and I'm like, I know how doors. And I remember like, it wouldn't do it. And all of a sudden, we're screaming during all of this. Pulled the door open as hard as I could, and that feeling of success, it hit my toes and slammed back shut. It was like boom, boom, and I was like ah, and like it was in my hand, and now the door is shut, and now they're staring at me. We're like I don't. I'm like oh, door, side, right, and we're opening it up and then doing it that way, and this happened probably all in the course of 2 seconds. But it felt like I was there for a day at that door, and then open it, and then all 3 of us boom, boom, go running out the front door. Being the geniuses we are, we all immediately run for home. 4th grader goes out the front door, runs for his house. My brother and I go out the front door, we run for our house. I, being the older, smarter one, immediately turn left and start running across the lawns. I remember like grass, tree, grass, bush, fastest I've ever run. My younger brother, because he was only 5 at the time, being more responsible, followed mom and dad's directions and ran down to the sidewalk because you want to go across lawns because that's rude. So I remember him running all the way down to the sidewalk and then turning and him running and running as fast as we can. And then all of a sudden, the front door came open and the guy comes running out after us. It was like right behind us. Apparently he was not polite enough to just lay down and die when we screamed. So he was following us. It felt like I ran forever. I had to have made it like at least a mile. But he caught me right away. I'm guessing it was like 9 or 10 feet. I don't think I made it out of the yard. It felt like I was like, he's never gonna catch. He's behind me. How's he? He's right there. And he's just like, and so I'm imagining it was like step, grab, child, and then turned me around. I remember looking over to my right as I was running, and my brother, who was running along this way, turned and we made eye contact with each other. And I remember looking at him and him looking at me and giving him that whole like, keep running, because I'm going to die. And he's giving that whole, like, I'm not stopping. As he kept going and he kept running and turning around. And the man turning me around to face him. And I was pretty sure at 7 years old that he was legally allowed to kill me. So I was expecting to die at any moment. And he turns me around. I remember him saying, you know, who are you? To which I replied, ah! I screamed into his face. And he followed it up with, why are you in my house? To which I followed up with, and just started crying at him. He then dragged me back into his house, screaming, and set me down on the stairs inside of his house. And I remember sitting there and being pretty sure once again that I was going to have to die. I remember holding on to the little stair rail banisters. I remember holding on to those and then just crying. And he went to go call the police, and the policeman showing up. And it just gets bits and pieces. I remember them taking me from there and then taking me back to my house. I remember being excited to ride in the car. Being in the police car was really cool because I was 7 years old. At the same time, it was really scary because I was pretty sure my parents were going to hurt me or kill me when I got home. I remember going from there up to the front door of my house and them ringing the doorbell and my mom showing up and them eventually, I don't remember what my mom said. I remember being disappointed and me crying. I remember them finding my brother because he was hiding under the bed. I remember them dragging him out, like his little fingernails like across the carpet, and they dragged him out. And then, being the good criminal I am, I immediately ratted out the fourth grader. I'm like, his name is blah, 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 and he lives. And I pointed that out, and they went and got him. And I remember the police bringing the fourth grader and his parents down to my house and sitting in my family room with my brother and I and my parents, and the cops talking to us. And it feeling like this was the end. I mean, the cops being like, you do realize what you did was breaking the law, and the fact that we could have arrested you and taken you to jail. But your arms are too twiggy. And what you've done is now going to stay on your record for the rest of your life. One, they couldn't really arrest me. I was 7 years old, but it was a good threat. And two, it didn't stay on my record for the rest of my life. But once again, it was a good threat. And it definitely scared me. And I remember thinking it was the end of my life at that point. And it made an impression on me. And it kept me from getting arrested for 7 more years. Which, hey, I'd gone 7 years without getting arrested. I made it 7 more. That was pretty good. And so I made it up until we're going to fast forward till junior high. And in junior high, second half of my 8th grade year, so in the springtime, I started making a poor choice. And there is no glorifying it and making it sound like it was not me being an idiot. I started shoplifting. I had friends who were doing it. They showed me how. And shoplifting is where you steal stuff from stores. And so I started taking stuff and stealing stuff all the time. I don't want to glamorize it because I was not some awesome hoodlum. I was not stealing like guns and radios to steal on the street. I was stealing comic books and candy, and that was it because criminal, still a dork. But I just want to give you an idea of what level of dorky I was. But I was good at it. Not something to brag about, but I mean, it's one of the things where I committed to doing it. So I started stealing all the time. I started stealing so much that it was more than I could eat. And that was sort of how I got popular, or at least tried to get popular, is I would steal candy and bring it to school and just give it to kids. I would have a duffel bag full of candy that I would steal, and then I would just bring it to school and I would just make it rain candy to other people. And so that was how I made friends for a while. Not the right way of doing it, but it's what I did. And then did that all throughout my summer between 8th grade and high school. Got to high school, continued doing it all through the beginning of my freshman year, up until wrestling season. And I remember the day it happened was during wrestling season. It was October because it was cold out and I was wearing a jacket. And we had a wrestling meet in the afternoon. And we were told that the wrestling meet thing, we could just be back at school by 4:30 or whatever time it was. And I went to school in Noblesville, which is just north of here. And we had a McDonald's and a drugstore right behind the school, like a CVS Walgreens thing. And we would go there after school and then come back over to meet for the ride. And I remember I was making weight, so I wasn't getting into McDonald's and I wasn't buying any candy that day. But when we went over to CVS, I remembered earlier in the day, I had seen a kid using Banaka breath spray. This is a kid who bought it for me to taunt me after this story. Banaka breath spray is the little spray bottle, and you like and you spray it in your mouth so you can talk to the ladies, and then your breath smells all minty. I'd seen a boy doing it earlier, talking to the ladies, and he was macking on them, and it was successful. So in my mind, I thought if I had breath spray, I could mack on the ladies, and that would be super successful. So I decided I was going to go out and get Banaka, but Banaka's not cheap. It was like $3 for this little canister, and I was like, that's way too much money for me to spend, but it could be free.
Pardon the interruption. I have one reminder today. All band students need to take their instruments and music home for your concert tonight at the high school. all band students need to take your instruments and music home for the concert tonight at the high school. Thank you. School will be dismissed at the bell.
And I still have a couple minutes. And so I decided I was going to steal a thing of Banaka. Never stolen one before. I'd only ever stolen candy and comic books. I remember going into the CVS, and the CVS had the double set of doors, which some of the drugstores have. You go through one set of doors, like a weird little airlock, and like a second set of doors. And I remember I had those, and they weren't automatic doors. You had to like push the little door handle to get into them. I remember going through the first set, the second set, got into the store, didn't know where the Banaka was, went up and down each aisle, and I was in there with like 10, 15 other wrestlers, kids walking around. And they were in the process of stealing stuff because they were hoodlum kids too. And so they were going around stealing stuff, and I remember trying to find the Banaka, and I finally found it, and it was in a package just like this, the back of it, the little bubble on the front. I remember grabbing it and then trying to figure out how best to steal it, because I didn't want to take it in a package, because then it's pretty easy to figure out. You still have to take it out of the package. I remember going down to the last aisle, and going down that one, because it was the drugs aisle, and I figured, who uses the drug aisle in a drugstore? That's ridiculous. I remember thinking that because it was empty. There was no one behind me and no one in front of me. So I grabbed the package, and I was walking along as nonchalantly as possible. I just grabbed it, ripped it open, took out the little packet, took out the little Banaka's thing, put it in my inside pocket, wadded up this part, and then just crammed it between two shelves as I continued to walk. No one saw me, got away with it clean, walked around to the front part of the store. I had a friend who was buying stuff in the little checkout line area. I remember walking past him in the checkout line, and there was a little clerk girl who was there who was checking him out. I remember walking past them and opening up the first door. It was a sunny day. I opened up the first door, turned right, because they had like, you had to come in this way, then turn right to go out the door. And I opened the next door, which led to the outside, and the door swung inward. And I grabbed that door and pulled it towards me. And before I could go through the door, a hand came down on my shoulder. And it was a heavy hand, and I heard the voice say, "Where do you think you're going?" And it was that moment where it was,
No.
tomorrow we'll pick up from there and remind me I was with the hand on my shoulder.